Well, at the state capitol this week, there was much to talk about, and eCapitol News Director Sean Ashley joins us to do exactly that. Hi, Sean.
How are you doing?
Well, let's dive right in. I understand the legislative leaders have talked about their priorities for the new session, which starts in February. What are they looking at?
Yeah, we had 3 of them speak at the State Chamber's Public Affairs Forum this week. Senate President Pro Tem Designate Greg Treat talked about his Legislative Office of Financial Transparency, which he has filed in Senate Bill 1, which would look at various state programs and agencies and how they're spending their money. House Speaker Charles McCall, the designate there, talked about education reform, noting that teachers received a pay raise this last year and that additional funding was put into schools, but really what they need to begin to look at is outcomes and see what will be happening there. None of the caucuses have really released their agendas for the upcoming year, so we're just beginning to see these pictures being painted.
2019 looms in the distance.
It's not that far away.
But it's coming fast, isn't it?
It
I
is.
thought there was already don't we have transparency? What is going to be different?
There are a number of different agencies and committees that do deal with transparency issues. The State Auditor and Inspector's Office, of course, as well as the Agency Performance and Accountability Commission. But this would be a very focused office that would dig deep into these agencies and see how they're using their money and provide what Senator Treat said would be additional information that really he says that legislators are not getting now. He said in many cases we're guessing at the numbers.
Another issue that was discussed was how to fix the state's health care system.
That's right. The state, of course, has not adopted Medicaid expansion, which was part of the Affordable Care Act. Asked about that, Senator Treat said he does not expect that the state will make a 180 and turn around and do that. House Speaker McCall indicated that it could be costly for the state. But Senate Minority Leader Kay Floyd pointed out that a number of states, redder than Oklahoma, have adopted Medicaid expansion, and that has been beneficial to them. What Senator Treat and House Speaker McCall pointed to was the idea of expanding a program called Insure Oklahoma that helps low-income individuals obtain health insurance, and perhaps they'll be putting more money and reforms into that program.
Turning now to gross production tax receipts are coming in, and it's paying off.
That's what we're seeing. If you'll recall, of course, during the special session, the incentive rate was increased from 2% to 5% on new wells, and what we're beginning to see is additional money coming in as a result of that change. Unfortunately, of course, oil prices and natural gas prices remain very, very low, and that is a concern as we move into the next fiscal year in July of next year.
And the regions for higher education are going to have a little bit of a challenge next year as well?
That's right. They're looking at the bills that have already been filed for the upcoming legislative session. There are nearly 30 that have been filed in the Senate, but none yet in the House. That's not particularly unusual. One of the bills filed in the Senate is Senator Nathan Dom's constitutional carry bill, a bill that would allow an individual, without first obtaining a permit, to openly or concealed carry a handgun. The concern of the regents for a number of years has been allowing guns on college campuses. They have opposed that idea. At present, that bill would not necessarily affect that issue, but as it goes through the legislative process, of course, it could be changed. So they indicated during the meeting they would be keeping a very careful eye on that piece of legislation.
And finally, we want to talk about the Murphy case. Tell everyone what that is.
Well, this is a case involving a man who was convicted of murder under state law. But this occurred in an area that used to be the Muskogee Creek Reservation area, a reservation that he claims now was never dissolved, and therefore he should have been tried under federal law rather than state. The case was recently argued before the U.S. Supreme Court, and this past week the U.S. Supreme Court asked both Oklahoma and his attorneys to file some additional briefs indicating what impact a ruling that essentially said this was still an Indian reservation land might have on the state and the various communities in those areas, as well as on law within the state of Oklahoma. Those briefs are due relatively quickly, and the court is not expected to decide the case until sometime before the end of June of 2019.
All right. Sean Ashley with eCapitol, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.